Thank you so much for coming out this morning. This is amazing. Awesome. Thank you to Nate and Chadwick and Philip and everyone for putting this together. I'm really flattered to come speak here. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of the Surfrider Foundation. Wow, that's great. We have a huge presence in San Diego. I work at the headquarters office, which is up in San Clemente, and that's the hub for our chapters all over the country, and I'll talk some more about that today. I think one of the things that's really interesting about surfing is that as a sport, it really has a unique sort of relationship with the creative community and arts. I mean, if you think about it, no one ever says, that sounds like a hockey band, or they have a lacrosse-y sound, you know, or that looks like baseball fashion, or, you know, they're a football photographer. But if you think about surfing, it's pretty interesting. It has all of those things. I mean, dating back to the Ventures and the Beach Boys, to current bands like the Alalas and Jack Johnson, there's surf music. You hear a song and you say, oh, it has a surfy sound. And then there's art, too. This is Thomas Campbell, a surfer from Santa Cruz, but there's a huge art scene around surfing, and there's surfing galleries here and in Los Angeles and in New York and in Tokyo and all over the world. And it's a genre amongst itself in the arts. And it's also fashion. You know, there's a huge fashion industry, some better than others, around surfing as well. Hey, that guy's dressed like a surfer. That's surf clothes. There's a whole fashion industry around it too. And there's a photography industry as well. And it's more than just landscapes. It's become an art form itself. And I can't think of any other sport that sort of has that collection of arts associated with it. And so I think that's a really interesting thing about surfing. And obviously surfing has a huge influence in San Diego and probably influences a lot of what you do or your relationship with the coast and the ocean. That's why a lot of us are here, because the climate and the coast and ocean in San Diego and Southern California are so unbelievably amazing. So, the Surfrider Foundation, one of the reasons I think that is because of the relationship surfers and beachgoers have with the geography of our coast and the ocean, and also it's just become a lifestyle. And that's why it's embodied all of these different sort of forms of art. That was great until the world got more crowded. And in the late 60s and early 70s, we started to see the impacts of our love for the coast. We were loving our coasts to death, unfortunately. There's a very famous wave in Dana Point called Killer Dana, which is now a harbor. It was one of the best waves in Southern California. It's gone. You can't surf there anymore because there's a harbor there. And so it was things like that and pollution in the ocean that created the need for an organization like the Surfrider Foundation. So in 1984, the Surfrider Foundation formed. It was surfing's first coastal conservation organization, and it was formed at Malibu, right up the road here, because there was water pollution, and the way they were managing the inlet at Malibu impacted the surfing and the surfers there. And so for the first time, surfers, instead of being sort of the stereotype of burned out, dropout, druggies, got active and became a political force, and here 30 years later, that's what Surfrider's all about. This is our mission statement. Surfrider's dedicated to the protection and enjoyment of the world's oceans, waves, and beaches through a powerful activist network. And the reason I really like our mission statement, it tells you what we do, where we do it, and how we do it. So protection and enjoyment. We're about protecting the coast and the ocean so we can use them and enjoy them and play in them. Where do we do it? Oceans, waves, and beaches. It's our coastlines. And how do we do it? Through a powerful activist network. And why do we care? Well, there's a million reasons. Some of the main reasons are this is our playground. Raise your hand if you've gone to the beach in the last year. Yeah, all of us. So we love it. And it's also a wonderful ocean ecosystem. I mean, it's like the Serengeti of the sea. There's been gray whales going up and down our coast over the last month. If you're down at the beach yesterday, you probably saw one. I mean, if you think about that for a second, it's like being in Africa and seeing elephants. They're right there, dolphins. And so it's a beautiful ecosystem that we're so lucky to live right adjacent to, and we want to protect that as well. It's also a really important part of our coastal economies. What is that? Nate talked about the identity of San Diego. These beach towns sell themselves as surf towns, as coastal coastal tourism is one of the drivers of the economy of all these coastal towns. And that coastal tourism requires a healthy oceans and coast. If you get sick, if you go in the water, you're not going to want to go back. So, and last, like Creative Mornings, our coasts and our oceans and our beaches are community. People meet there, they play together, they surf together. Surfrider 2 is part of a community as well. So there are all these reasons why we need to protect those oceans. And the beauty of it is if more or less if we just stop doing some bad things to it, it's going to take care of itself, and it's a gift that will keep on giving to us in San Diego and everywhere around the world. Unfortunately, the bad news is there's a number of threats. Urban runoff from our developed coastlines, like in Southern California, is the number one threat to water quality. There was a surfer in November or just early December named Barry Alt. Had anyone heard about Barry Alt? I mean, it's a horrible, tragic story. He was surfing at Sunset Cliffs, a surf spot in South San Diego, and he got a staph infection. He was a 70-year-old guy, and he died. He died from going surfing in the ocean. I mean, that's so fundamentally wrong. Imagine if kids went to a park and died. We'd never accept that, ever. So we still have a serious water quality problem in Southern California and around the United States that we need to address. Beach access, we have great beach access in San Diego. We kind of take it for granted that you can just pull up and find a path to the beach, but there's a lot of places in the country where that's not the case. And there's a lot of people working to protect that beach access all the time to make sure you have that right to get down to the beach, because the beach are public and our oceans are public, and so we need to make sure we have access to those at all times. Increasingly, there's what we call industrialization of the ocean, more and more uses of the ocean, whether it's aquaculture, offshore wind and wave energy, stuff that could potentially be a green source of energy, that's great. Oil drilling, it's a big threat on the East Coast right now, which I'll talk about later. So we want to make sure when we use the ocean that we do it in a way that is in balance with the ocean ecosystems and our interests in the recreational pursuits. So we don't want to put a wind energy plant right in front of our favorite surf spot. Let's find a place where that won't impact recreation or whale migration patterns or something else. And then coastal development. I mean, we know about this in San Diego. The coastline here is so heavily developed. So a lot of our beaches are eroding, and so people want to build right up to the shore so they can have that whitewater view from their kitchen. But those bluffs are a dynamic landscape and they're eroding, and as a result, we often want to put up seawalls or pump sand onto the beach, which has an impact on recreation, an impact on the environment, and if we put up seawalls, we're likely to lose the beaches, which is what makes San Diego such an amazing place to be. And then one of the reasons we're here, the theme of this year, climate change, I'll get into that more a little bit later. That's really the 600-pound gorilla in the room. It used to be if we could just stop humans from kind of doing stupid things, dumb things to the coast, we'd be okay. But now Mother Nature's having a big impact too, and we're going to have to learn how to adjust to that. So what does Surfrider do? How do we tackle these issues? We do a number of things. We play defense. This is probably what we're best known for. We stop bad projects. There was a toll road up here that was going to impact the Trestles, one of the best surf spots in the United States. It was a big fight we fought. We had about 6,500 people show up at Del Mar in protest of that project, and we stopped it, which was awesome. People power at work. Yeah, thank you. A lot of people in San Diego came and helped. I mean, like Creative Mornings, the Surfrider Foundation is a volunteer-based organization, so it's all about people power, and for us it works, and I'm sure it's going to work for you guys too. But we don't always want to just be putting holes in the dike and stopping bad projects and playing defense. We're also trying to advance policy to get proactive and stop problems before they start. A great example of that is that we were part of a group that passed a statewide bag ban last summer, the first state in the United States to ban single-use plastic bags, which is also awesome. Thank you for your support on that. That bag ban was supposed to go into effect this July. There was news just last week. The plastic bag industry, mostly based in Texas, collected 500,000 signatures to create a referendum. So that bag ban's been put on hold by these out-of-state interests, and we're going to have to vote on it in California in the November 2016 election. All the polling suggests that 60% of Californians support the bag ban. So it's kind of a cynical ploy by the bag industry just to get another 14 months of bag sales, but we're going to stop that too. But that's an example of advancing policy, getting ahead of these things. That bag ban's going to happen. We do stewardship. We monitor beaches. We do beach cleanups. In other parts of the country, we do dune plantings to help natural dunes protect our coastlines. So we do an ocean-friendly gardens program. We go out there and do landscaping we can take care of our own little piece of dirt and try to make sure it's actually solving the runoff problem, not contributing to it. So we do a lot of everyday stewardship. And I think one of the most important things we do, and you can see that happening with Creative Mornings too, is we really build leaders. People get involved, they start organizing, they get politically active, and they realize they can have a huge influence in their community and work with their community, the beachgoers, and really have a positive influence. One of the sad things is a lot of people don't show up for city council meetings. The good news is if you show up with 10 people, you're a big deal. And so we do a lot of work to actually build leadership within Surfrider to help create a movement to protect our coastlines. There are about 96 different campaigns around the country, and we organize them into these 4 groups. These are the sort of 4 tiers of work that Surfrider does, which I described earlier. Beach access, protecting our coast from coastal development, water quality, and offshore ocean issues. And we organize our programs. These are the stewardship programs. We do water quality monitoring. We do volunteer water quality monitoring all over the country. Our Rise Above Plastics program is not only advocating for things like plastic bag bans, but also encouraging people to use reusable bottles, skip the plastics, use reusable coffee cups, try to eliminate single-use plastic from your life because that stuff sticks around forever. Quad is a youth program, and Ocean Friendly Gardens is our gardening program. So San Diego, for example, is doing Rise Above Plastics and Ocean Friendly Gardens, and you can get involved with that here. This map's a little hard to see, but this is our chapter network. We have 10 regions around the country, and we have chapters in all but 3 states in the Gulf. We have 20 chapters here in California and 84 around the country. So we have a great network of coastal activists working on issues on every coast, including the Great Lakes, Hawaii, and Puerto Rico around the country. And they're working on about 100 different campaigns at any one time across that network, local bag bans, stopping bad development programs, trying to advance good policies. And since 2006, one of the things we're really proud of is we track those victories. So for us, a campaign is a political action. We want a decision maker to make a decision that's going to benefit our oceans and coasts. And we measure those every month, and we've gotten about 300 of those. That means that 300 times something really bad that was going to happen, we stopped, or something really good that wouldn't have happened, we've created. So that's something we're really proud of. Our network has about 10,000 activists, people that go out and take action in some way, show up physically every year. And then we have a good membership. You can join Surfrider for $25 and become a member, something I recommend that you all do. And then we have about 400,000 people in social media supporting our activities in different ways. So we have pretty good reach. And we take those 100 campaigns and we organize them into priorities. And this is a map. I know you can't read it. This is a chalk map in our office in San Clemente. I welcome any of you to come by the office at any time and take a look at this thing. And we organize by issue and by geography so we can really focus on key issues and make sure that we're succeeding at those. In California, we have 3 priorities. Coastal adaptation planning. What does that mean? That means, I'll talk about this more in a second, but sea level's rising, and we have 86% of the California coast is eroding. That erosion's fine as long as we don't get in the way of it, which we have a bad habit of doing. So we're going to try to figure out how to adapt over the next 100 years to the sea level rise that's coming. It's a big challenge, and it's a great challenge, and I'll talk more about that in a second. Offshore fracking. Surfrider was actually one of the organizations that unearthed the fact that oil industry in California, the oil drilling off of Santa Barbara and Huntington Beach, were actually doing fracking out there with no regulation, no notification. And so we're working with the Coastal Commission to force them to at least tell us what they're doing out there and hopefully put a stop to it. There's a big oil drilling campaign in Hermosa Beach, Keep Hermosa campaign. So we're trying to stop oil drilling right in the center of downtown Hermosa Beach. It's ridiculous. And then last, we were part of a group that set up a network of marine protected areas. These are ocean parks up and down the California coast. There's a handful in San Diego. There's one off of Swamis. There's one down in La Jolla. And these are no fishing areas. They're areas where we're trying to let the ocean ecosystem recover and come back. And so we're working hard to make sure those work. The fishing community made big sacrifices. They've agreed not to fish in those things. That's money straight out of their pocket. So if we're going to do this and it's going to work, we want to make sure that's done right. And then even down here in San Diego, we have 3 sort of priority campaigns. Our Rise Above Plastics campaigns. We're trying to encourage restaurants to become ocean friendly by getting rid of single-use plastics. I'm going to work with the Creative Morning guys to get rid of the plastic cups. We can do it. Pure Water San Diego is a project. There's a wastewater treatment plant in Point Loma pumping sewage out into the ocean. It's been doing it for decades. We were able to convince them to stop doing that and start recycling the water and treating it to drinking water standards. So this gets pollution out of the ocean and solves the water crisis that obviously San Diego and the rest of Southern California has. So it's a project we're really proud of, and it's in the works, but still requires support. And last, beach preservation. We're trying to make sure we don't just seawall the entire coast of San Diego County and lose all of our beaches. So those are some of our priorities in San Diego. If you get involved with the Surfrider chapter in San Diego, it's awesome group doing so much good. These are some of the things that you could get involved with. We're also really proud of the fact, because Surfrider is a grassroots organization, those 85 chapters, like Creative Mornings, are volunteer run. So it's a group of people who care about our coasts and oceans who are self-organizing and working on issues. And there's a small staff in the headquarters where I am and out and around our regions that get paid to kind of hold the whole thing together. But as a result, we're really efficient with our money. The money really goes out to the ground and gets work done on those 100-odd campaigns and those programs, and not that much of it gets spent sort of on the operational side. So that's something we're really, you get a lot of bang for your buck when you support the Surfrider Foundation. And we have a pretty good reach. We have a good network. We're out there. You can't see the sort of categories, but that's Facebook and our website and our newsletter and our mailings and our media reach. But it's not enough. The problems are bigger than that. And so one of the things we really need to do is find ways to get out there and connect with people and educate them on these issues. And as all of you know, we're incredibly saturated with information all the time. So how do we get people to care about these ocean issues? And this is sort of the connection back to the arts. We've had a lot of luck because I think of the connection between surfing and the creative community. We've had a tremendous amount of goodwill within the creative community supporting what we do. This is Perry Farrell from formerly Jane's Addiction playing a fundraiser for us in LA. This is Shepard Ferry, who donated art to us to make t-shirts to help educate about issues. Saatchi and Saatchi in LA did an amazingly impacting campaign talking about plastic pollution. The fact, there's 5 trillion pieces of plastic out in our oceans. When that first Asian Airlines plane crashed out in the ocean and they were trying to find the debris field, they couldn't find it because there's so much other plastic in the ocean. The whole ocean looked like a debris field off of Indonesia. I mean, scary, scary stuff. Fish are now ingesting that plastic. And so when they catch fish out in the middle of the ocean and they cut them open, they're finding plastic in their guts. That plastic absorbs toxins. Those toxins get absorbed by the fish. When we first made this campaign about the plastic sushi, we're like, are we being factually accurate? Are we being factually accurate? Is this sort of a hyperbole? And it turns out it's not. It's a scary thing. So, these are serious issues, but the creative community this ad was one of our most effective ads. It really got people's attention, and they started thinking about how their relationship with plastic is affecting them, not only in the environment, but also their personal health. This is a picture from a guy, Chris Jordan, who's up in the Pacific Northwest. He's taken a lot of really amazing pictures of animals and done a lot of art looking at the scale of plastic pollution problem. This is an albatross that's decomposed. Those are the contents of its stomach. So it died probably as a result of eating plastic, which it thought was food in the ocean out there. So anyway, serious issues, but great stuff from the creative community to help us draw awareness to these really, really important issues. This is another ad from Young and Rubicamp for Surfrider Europe, and it's a kind of a subtle play on the plastics at our oceans. I think anyone who surfs regularly in San Diego will tell you, I know I do, that almost every time I go surfing, I find plastic floating around in the ocean. I pick it up and stuff it in my wetsuit. The sad reality is we don't even need to Photoshop this, because reality is even more scary than the Photoshop version. This is a shot by a guy named Zach Noyle, famous, well-known surf photographer in Hawaii. He took this picture in Indonesia where they have a massive plastic pollution. So all great aids to help us get our message out and connect with the broader public. And here in San Diego, Spy Sunglasses, they're an Encinitas-based company. They've brought in the fashion connection. This is one of the greenest sunglasses ever made. It actually has like a compostable frame. And so they've been a big supporter of us, and so we can use fashion also as an education tool to talk about plastics. So a number of ways that the creative communities really help Surfrider and the larger ocean and coastal conservation community sort of get the word out about these issues, which is really, really great. So does anybody know who this is? He's a very famous graffiti artist. Banksy. He painted this in London after the Denmark climate talks that were a year and a half ago fell apart. And I think this is the theme of, when they talk about climate, we could talk about San Diego's awesome climate. For us, it's all about climate change and what that's going to do to us. And so, one of the biggest challenges with climate change is sort of denial and our sort of refusal to, get involved in this issue. And it's a tough issue. It's a slow motion disaster. It's really hard to point to any one thing and say that's climate change. If there's an earthquake and a bunch of buildings fall down, everyone says, oh God, we better retrofit and have earthquake standards. We don't really have something like that to shock us awake. I mean, Superstorm Sandy on the East Coast maybe did some of that. So this is the nerdiest slide of my presentation. It's the only graph. I know it's Friday morning. That's 1990. That's 2100. And this is sea level rise predictions over that time period. That's 0.2 meters, so that's like 8 inches or something like that. Sea level rise in the last 100 years has increased about 8 inches. That's from global warming, melting the ice caps and the ocean expanding. And so sea levels is rising all over the globe at different rates in different places. And we've already seen that happen. We're here. So we've already seen sea level rise a fair amount. And there's a lot of predictions. Is it going to rise another 8 inches in the next 100 years, which would be, down here, or is it going to rise 6 feet in the next 100 years? And that's one of the debates, if people admit it at all. It's hard to see here. There's a gray little triangle right there that you can't really see. That's the same gray triangle down here. So that was the range of predictions. This is reality based on satellite and tide gauge. So that means the line of reality is actually way up here. So all of our predictions are too conservative. Every time the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change, comes out with a new report about global warming and sea level rise and the impact of sea level rise, they say, oh, the last report we were too conservative. It's going to be more than we thought. 2 years later, the next report comes out. It's actually going to be more than we thought. So we know it's going to be more than 6 inches. Is it going to be 3 feet or 6 feet of sea level rise? And if you think about it, that 6 inches, 8 inches, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it's caused all the coastal erosion problems in California. It was a huge factor in what happened in Sandy. So if it's going to double or increase by 3 to 6 feet, it's going to fundamentally rearrange our relationship with our coastlines. There's another thing that's happening. The more carbon that we pump into the atmosphere, that carbon's not only is the heat being absorbed by the ocean, but so is the carbon. And you've probably heard about this, it's acidifying the ocean. So it's increasing the acidity of the ocean. And this is, a little foraminifera. It's like a little planktonic snail shell, tiny. That's 100 nanometers. The one on the left is what they normally look like. The one on the right is what happens when they acidify the ocean. So this is going to affect, it's already affecting oysters and clams and lobsters in Maine and up in the Pacific Northwest, but it could affect the whole base of the food chain. So this is another challenge with climate change as well. So big issues, and we're also talking about drilling oil off the East Coast. About 3 weeks ago, Obama opened up the potential for oil drilling from Virginia down to Florida. Doesn't make any sense. And it's kind of a surprising thing, and that's another thing that we'll fight and hopefully stop. He proposed that actually in March before the big Gulf oil spill. Obviously, we had that catastrophic spill in the Gulf of Mexico, and he pulled it off the shelf, and here 5 years later, he's putting it back on. We don't think it's wise, given all these threats with climate change and also what it can do to our coasts. And they're still finding oil washing up on the beaches. You don't hear about it much, but along the Gulf. So challenging issues. And again, this is fantasy. This is Sando Burke, another well-known artist who's donated a lot of his sort of his work to Surfrider to benefit coastal conservation. Reality again sort of exceeds our fantasy. This is a famous picture from the coast of New Jersey after Superstorm Sandy. and just sort of a really visual reminder of when we combine storminess with sea level rise and intensive coastal development, what we're facing along our coastlines. This is Malibu right up the street where Surfrider was founded during a storm about 5 or 6 years ago. You can see these sort of meager attempts to try to defend the coast, but ultimately, this is a challenge that if we try to just armor the coasts, we're gonna lose. So that's a lot of gloom and doom, but here's the good news. All of these problems are solvable, and sea level rise is increasing. It took us 100 years to get into this mess, and we have 100 years to try to get out of this mess, and it's all doable. The ocean acidification problem, 40 to 50% of that problem's from local sources, eutrophication of our watersheds. That's an easily solvable problem. We know what to do. We just need to find the will to do it. And the sea level rise problem is something we can also address. This is a project that Surfrider did in Ventura at Surfers Point. This stretch of coastline right here used to have a giant seawall, and it looked like this picture. If I can go backwards. It looked like that. Now it looks like this. There's this gorgeous, beautiful beach. I was up here for a surf contest with my kids, and it's awesome. The waves are great. And what they did here is they moved this parking lot back, they planted dunes, they restored the beach and the sand. And so it's a small example. If we're willing to adapt, this is a coastal adaptation model, if we're willing to adapt and step back from the coast, we can make this thing work. It's a big challenge, but it's absolutely doable, and it's something we can definitely do. So even with climate change, we need to recognize the problem, we need to understand the problem, and then we need to start taking action to get involved. And it's hard because it's this slow motion disaster. And I think that's really, another place where the creative arts community can come in and help us. We need creative minds. We need to understand how people think, understand what they react to, and figure out how to take this big amorphous issue that's too big for people to get and understand, and really be clever about how we can communicate that. And so I put that challenge out to you and everybody else in the creative community. Help us figure out how to get people to take action on this issue, and all these issues in San Diego and beyond, and I think together we're gonna be able to solve them. In conclusion, one of the things that people often ask me, they're like, so you're dealing with all these environmental problems, aren't you depressed all the time? How do you deal with this? And it's actually a really interesting answer, easy answer for us. Surfrider is about action. We have all these volunteers around the country, people like you guys, who are volunteering their time to make the world and our coastlines a better place. And so if you focus all your energy on those people that are out there doing good work, they're cleaning up beaches, they're planting dunes, they're reforming our landscape through gardening, they're taking on these bad projects, they're supporting bag bans, they're getting people out there to change their behavior and their relationship with plastic. You focus on all the incremental positive changes. And so for me, that's what keeps me so excited to be working at Surfrider. That's why it's so easy for me to encourage people to get involved. The same energy you feel in this room this morning with the creative community, the surfing activist community feels the same way. And I'm here today to say I think there's a really, really natural relationship between those two groups. So thank you very much for coming out and listening to me this morning.